perform Hajj. There is a set of rites and rituals that a Muslim must perform to fulfill the obligation of Hajj. Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It is obligatory to perform Hajj at least once in a lifetime for a Muslim who can physically and financially afford the journey. For a Muslim woman, the journey of Hajj requires her to be accompanied by a male relative who is her mahrum, i.e. her husband, or a man she is forbidden to marry, such as her father, brother, or uncle. This is not a discriminatory ruling. It is a stipulation that makes it easier for her to travel and carry heavy belongings from one place to another during the strenuous rituals of Hajj. If any Muslim has enough financial savings to allow them to easily go for Hajj, they have to hasten in fulfilling this pivotal obligation of Islam. The meaning of the word Hajj is to set out to a sacred place out of devotion and seeking reward. Every religion has always had the concept of pilgrimage, in which followers or believers undertake a journey to a sacred geographical location that has special relevance and significance to that particular religion. The Hajj as it is today was initiated by Prophet Ibrahim, when he built the sacred house in Mecca, known as Kaaba, with his son, Ismail. Followers of the monotheistic religion founded by Ibrahim used to perform circumambulations of the Kaaba and descended to Mecca once a year for the pilgrimage. The following terminology will explain some of the common Islamic terms related to Hajj. Kaaba, the sacred house of Islam that is located at the center of Masjid al-Haram in Mecca. It is empty, and kept covered with a black cloth. It specifies the direction of prayer for Muslims around the world, but it is not worshipped itself. Mina, an open ground which is now known as the Tented City because it houses thousands of tents demarcated according to the countries of the world, where pilgrims stay. The modern tents of Mina today are air-conditioned and carpeted. Makeshift bathrooms are also located near each group of tents. Tawaf, 7 circuits or circumambulations around the Kaaba, starting from the Hajar al-Aswad, black stone fixed on one of its corners, and ending with 2 units of prayer. Sa'i, walking 7 times between the 2 mounts named Safa and Marwa that lie near the Kaaba, within the precincts of the Masjid al-Haram. The Sa'i starts from Safa and ends at Marwa, where the pilgrim shaves their head, for men, or trims their hair, for women. Umrah, performing 1 tawaf and 1 sa'i. Ihram, a state in which the pilgrim may not wear certain things, face veil for women, stitched clothes, and booted shoes for men, or do certain actions, such as cutting hair or nails, putting on perfume in any form, having sexual relations with one's spouse, fighting, wrangling, vain talk, lying, backbiting, or slander. Dhul Hijjah, the sacred month in which Hajj is performed. This month also has significance for Muslims around the world who are not performing Hajj, in that it has the second Eid festival that involves sacrifice of an animal for the sake of Allah, known as Eid al-Adha. Wuquf, standing in deep, devoted, and exclusive prayer and remembrance of Allah. Miqat, the place which signifies the entrance into the state of Ihram for any pilgrim. There are several miqats depending on the direction from which a pilgrim is arriving in Saudi Arabia for Hajj or Umrah. Talbiyah, a vocal prayer in Arabic by which a pilgrim responds to the call/invitation towards Hajj or Umrah by saying, "I am here, O Allah, I am here. I am here, there is no associate with you, I am here. Indeed all praise and blessing are for you, and the kingship, there is no associate with you." Nahr, the act of worship associated with this month, in which Muslims sacrifice an animal such as a ram, sheep, camel, or a cow for the pleasure of Allah, emulating the spirit of sacrifice of Ibrahim, who had succumbed to Allah's command of sacrificing his own son for Allah. Jamrah/Jamra'at, any of the three stone pillars near Mina, where Satan tried to dissuade Ibrahim from sacrificing his son for Allah's sake, to which the latter responded by pelting the former with pebbles to drive him away. Rami, today, pilgrims repeat this action in emulation of the steadfastness of Ibrahim, by pelting the three Jamra'at with pebbles in the same manner. This is known as Rami. Note: the pillars have no significance except just to mark the spots where Satan approached Ibrahim. The pillars do not signify Satan himself. Zamzam, a miraculous water that sprung from the ground when the prophet Ismail rubbed his feet on it in thirst. This water springs forth to this day in an unlimited supply that does not wane despite the millions who have been drinking from it since centuries. The Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, established rites and rituals of the Hajj by performing it himself. There are three types of Hajj. 1. Hajj Qiran. This is reserved for the pilgrim who brings along his sacrificial animal with him on the Hajj journey. This Hajj is not performed by most pilgrims today. 2. Hajj Ifrad. This is performed only by those Muslims who reside in Saudi Arabia. 3. Hajj Tamattu. This is the Hajj performed by majority of the Muslim pilgrims, in which they perform Umrah when they reach Makkah, then exit the state of Ihram for the rest of their stay in or around Mecca until the 8th day of Dhul Hijjah, whence they enter Ihram again for the main 5 Hajj days. The Umrah at the start of the journey is a part of this type of Hajj. Make your intention solely the pleasure of Allah. The Hajj is only to be performed to please Allah and fulfill its obligation due upon a Muslim. It should not be done for the sake of establishing one's piety or seeking to be known as a Hajji. Hajj will not be valid unless the intention is completely pure. Join a group and get yourself vaccinated. After you have registered for Hajj with a certain group in your area, all pilgrims proceed in a group, under a leader known as a mu'allim. Get yourself vaccinated and submit your documents to the Hajj group leader. The Saudi government requires each to-be pilgrim to be vaccinated for protection from certain diseases. Note: consult others who have performed Hajj before you to authenticate the validity of the Hajj group beforehand. Many fake Hajj group leaders disappear at Jeddah airport, leaving their group on its own to perform Hajj with little knowledge or support. Beware of such scams. Gain knowledge. The to-be pilgrim should attend Hajj training classes, read books, meet people who have performed Hajj before, and read up material and advice on authentic websites on the internet in order to be fully knowledgeable about the requirements of Hajj. Put on the clothes for Ihram just before leaving for the airport. Just before departing for Hajj from one's house, one should put on the clothes for Ihram. However, the actual state of Ihram is entered with the renewal of intention when the airplane passes over the prescribed miqat, at which point the pilgrim starts reciting the talbiyah as an announcement of his intention to perform Hajj from that point onwards. Most Hajj flights announce the passing over the miqat. Some pilgrims delay putting on their Ihram clothes until right at this point, because they are self-conscious of being seen wearing 2 pieces of cloth, especially if they are departing from non-Muslim countries' airports. Waiting till nearing the miqat to put on the Ihram garments is risky, because the pilgrim might pass the miqat without being in Ihram, for which he will need to offer an expiation. Note: the clothing for women in Ihram is the same as usual, only wearing a stitched face veil is forbidden. She may cover her face by the end of her headscarf if she so wishes. Perform Umrah as soon as you reach Mecca. The pilgrim should hasten to perform Umrah when they arrive at Jeddah airport in Saudi Arabia. It is a drive of an hour or so from Jeddah to Mecca. Exit the state of Ihram and live in or around Mecca until the days of Hajj. After the Umrah is done, the pilgrim can change his clothes back to normal, stitched clothing, and live in Mecca or its whereabouts until the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. Most pilgrims spend this time in devotion and worship, offering salah in congregation in the Masjid al-Haram, and performing supererogatory tawaf daily. Tip: conserve physical energy for Hajj. Do not fast or perform too many tawafs of the Kaaba. Performing any further umrahs before Hajj is also not part of the Prophet's sunnah. On 8th Dhul Hijjah, enter the state of Ihram, and leave Mecca for Mina. Pictured this morning signifies the official start of the Hajj. Groups depart for Mina after Fajr prayer, in buses, or on foot, reciting the Talbiyah all the way to their tent in Mina. Do not wander off outside your tent to explore Mina, as many pilgrims get hopelessly lost in the complicated maze of similar tents on this day. When they make this mistake, some even miss their Hajj rites because they keep wandering in Mina day in and day out. Perform all 4 salahs of the day inside your tent, in congregation. Abstain from idle talk, gossip, chatting or useless conversation. Spend a day holding Hajj talks in your tent, helping others, counseling or educating others, or remembering Allah. Food is usually provided by the group, but is also available in shops. Always proceed to the bathroom with your group mates, because on the first day in Mina, there is a high chance of getting lost. On 9th Dhul Hijjah, leave for Arafat. After Fajr prayer the next day, depart for the plain of Arafat. At Arafat, you should preferably stay inside your tent, offer dur, and asr salah in joint form behind the imam or on your own. If you miss the congregation for a valid reason, such as arriving late due to crowding on the roads, have lunch, and then do sincere wukuf until sunset, abstaining from conversation or other useless activities. Note: this day is the most important day of Hajj. If the pilgrim asks Allah for forgiveness on this day till sunset, all his previous sins are completely wiped out. The most important act of worship of 9th Dhul Hijjah is the wukuf of Arafat, exclusive prayer, remembrance, and repentance towards Allah during the time from Dur to Maghrib, sunset. It is sad how pilgrims waste their time in Arafat in idle talk, gossip, listening to music, smoking, or wandering around doing nothing. They should be reminded of the importance of repentance during the last few hours before sunset in Arafat. Moreover, they should not hasten to leave, pushing and shoving others out of their way. The Prophet Muhammad urged pilgrims to depart with calmness. If a pilgrim does not make it to Arafat before sunset on 9th Dhul Hijjah, for whatever reason, their Hajj stands null and void, and they'll have to repeat it in order to fulfill its obligation. After sunset, proceed calmly towards the plain of Muzdalifah to spend the night, board your buses or proceed on foot to Muzdalifah to spend the night. Take along your sleeping bags and a bottle of water to do wudu/ablution for Salah, as there is hardly any water available in Muzdalifah. After arriving in Muzdalifah, pray Maghrib and Isha Salah shortened and combined, then pick a few dozen pebbles in a bag for the Rami to be done in Mina later. Try to sleep a bit until Fajr. Engaging in worship during this night is not the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. Pray Fajr prayer, then depart for Mina before sunrise. Important note: make sure you are within the boundaries of Arafat and Muzdalifah within their required time period. There are high boards indicating the limits of both these grounds, so make sure you have entered the ground within the prescribed time. Some pilgrims stay in the valley of Namira, which is adjacent to Arafat, unknowingly, and have their Hajj thus invalidated. The morning of 10th Dhul Hijjah, go back to Mina, perform Rami of the largest Jamra, Jamra al-Aqaba, with the pebbles collected in Muzdalifah. After praying Fajr in Muzdalifah, go back to Mina in your bus or on foot. Take special care of the sick, weak, and elderly, as by now they are extremely tired, especially if they have been on foot, with sleeping bags, food, and other belongings in tow. Many pilgrims lose their way or their group leader on their way back to Mina. Help others, be kind, and always abstain from shouting, pushing, shoving, fighting and wrangling, as these actions are forbidden, haram, in the state of Iram. After arriving in Mina, deposit your belongings in your tent, have something to eat, rest a bit if needed. Most pilgrims do need it by now, then proceed on foot towards the largest Jamra to perform Rami. Say Allahu Akbar before throwing each of the 7 pebbles, collected in Muzdalifah, at the pillar. Do not throw anything else at the pillar. Remove yourself from the crowd as soon as you are done. The weak, women and elderly may have someone else do their Rami on their behalf if they are too tired to perform it themselves. Slaughter your sacrificial animal, nahr, shave your head, halak recommended for men only, or trim it short, kasra, and exit the state of Iram. In the past, when the number of pilgrims was not so high, the slaughter was done manually. Nowadays, the slaughter is pre-arranged by the group leader, and it is not done by the pilgrims themselves. Rather, it is done on their behalf by others, and the meat is distributed to the poor. Pilgrims nowadays do not get to eat their own slaughtered animal's meat, which is a sunnah of Prophet Muhammad. After Rami, when the pilgrims are notified via phone that their animal has been slaughtered, they shave their heads, change their clothes, exiting the state of Ihram. Now, all restrictions are lifted except that of intercourse with spouse, and set off to Mecca for Tawaf Ifadah, the next major milestone of Hajj after the Wukuf of Arafat. Go to Mecca from Mina to perform Tawaf Ifadah, followed by Sa'i, then return to Mina to spend the night. This Tawaf and Sa'i constitute one of the most important rites of Hajj. It cannot be substituted or compensated for if it is missed by a pilgrim. In the past few years, it has become exceedingly difficult for pilgrims to perform this Tawaf on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, because of the sheer magnitude of the total number of pilgrims performing Hajj every year. Arafat, Mina, and Muzdalifah are open grounds where there is ample space to harbor the entire pilgrim population at one time, but the Masjid al-Haram is not large enough to allow all the pilgrims to perform this Tawaf on the same day. Therefore, if you cannot perform this Tawaf on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, you may perform it on the 11th or the 12th 11th Dhul Hijjah, spend a day in Mina, and do Rami of the 3 Jamra'at during the time between Dhuhr prayer and sunset. Spend a day in Mina, going to perform Rami of all the 3 Jamra'at any time between Dhuhr and sunset. Tawaf Ifadah can also be performed on the 11th. If someone was unable to perform it on the 10th, which is a common occurrence nowadays, due to the high number of pilgrims and the ensuing problems of transport and crowding. 12th Dhul Hijjah, if you want to leave Mina to go to Mecca, do so before sunset. Otherwise stay in Mina for another night. Majority of the pilgrims try to leave Mina as soon as they can on this day, after doing Rami at the sun's decline at midday. This has been the cause of several deaths due to the pushing and shoving involved in the hurry to be done with Rami, as most pilgrims bring all their belongings near the Jamra'at before midday, intending to leave Mina with them as soon as possible. As a result, when millions rush to perform Rami like this at the same time, a stampede can occur, with people getting trampled and killed as a result. This happened in Hajj 2004. Pilgrims should therefore not show haste, and willingly stay in Mina another night. Perform Rami of the 3 Jamra'at any time between Dhuhr and sunset. Do not show haste in doing Rami as soon as its time starts. Delegate your Rami to a young man in your family if the crowds are too strong. This can be done by women, or by those who are sick, weak, or old. Because of the high incidence of stampedes and fatalities during Rami in the past few years, some scholars have allowed pilgrims to perform Rami even after sunset on the 11th and 12th of Dhul Hijjah. The 12th of Dhul Hijjah is also the last day that a pilgrim can fulfill the obligation of Tawaf Ifadah before sunset. Spend the night in Mina, and relish this as your last time there, until and unless you perform Hajj again. 13th Dhul Hijjah, perform Rami, then leave Mina to go back to Mecca. Hajj rites are officially over once you perform Rami of the 3 Jamra'at on the 13th. Depart to Mecca, from where you can leave to go back to your own country, after performing Tawaf Wada, the farewell Tawaf, before leaving Mecca for the last time. The spirit of Hajj. Many people wonder why Hajj involves so many unusual rites and restrictions, or what could be the wisdom behind doing all this physically challenging traveling and rituals. Anyone who has performed Hajj will testify to the fact that the foremost lesson taught by it is patience in the obedience of Allah, because only someone who is doing the Hajj solely for Allah's pleasure can persevere in performing one strenuous rite after another, without complaining or questioning its wisdom. Secondly, when so many Muslims from diverse cultural and financial backgrounds throng the same places, sleeping on roads and dusty grounds under the sky with no more than 2 pieces of cloth on their bodies, eating cheap food, sharing the same bottle of water for ablution, helping each other out in answering the calls of nature, you'll be surprised how many times this happens during Hajj, and sharing their medicines with other pilgrims who fall sick on the journey, teaches the Muslims selfless compassion and mercy for others, making this journey the most memorable one of their lifetime. You might never see or meet that considerate pilgrim again, who helped you reach your tent, or who safely got you through the crowds, but you will always appreciate their kindness and pray for them for the rest of your life. That is the true essence and wisdom behind the Hajj, the human bonding and selflessness that knows no prejudice or cultural boundaries. Caution: abstain from fighting over prayer space in the Masjid al-Haram or Masjid al-Nabawi. Quick tips: keep a 500 ml bottle full of water with you at all times during Hajj. It comes in handy for drinking or for ablution. Useful links: Sheikh Uthaymeen's detailed description of Hajj. What is Hajj? An introductory article on the BBC website Hajj at a Glance, step-by-step guide, Q&A on Hajj.